the conference for us. He is coming directly from Bonn in Germany, and I'm talking about Timo Wild, who is the head of SAP practice at LeanIX. Tim has spent over 10 years in the SAP ecosystem, enabling customers to continuously transform their SAP ERP and HCM landscapes. He joined LeanIX earlier this year with the vision to connect the two disciplines of EA and SAP IT more seamlessly. And we are very much looking forward, Timo, for your insights on how we can accomplish just that. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and wisdom with our global audience today.
Yeah, thank you, Jose, for the warm introduction and for having me here. It's a pleasure to have this presentation. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the value that data-driven enterprise architecture can provide for an S4 journey. And in terms of the agenda, I would like to give a short introduction about LeanIX and what we are doing, and then just talk about the impact enterprise architecture can have on transformations like S4HANA. Then Jose already mentioned it, and you have it for a handout and download. We have a survey. So we did the survey at the beginning of this year, just asking enterprise architects about their involvement in an S4 journey and how satisfied they are with their involvement and what the challenges are. So I will provide some key learnings about that survey. And in the end, I just would like to give maybe a little bit of a different perspective of a value that an enterprise architecture let's start can have for such transformations. So about it and kick it off to explain what we are doing. So not mapping street or stuff like that. We are mapping applications in the end. SaaS applications, microservices, cloud services. We are mapping IT components, interfaces, data objects, and what the data flow in the end is, and just help the EA practice to map and maintain the as-is infrastructure of their IT and enable them to report on those information, which is then maintained in the inventory. In a nutshell, and I will keep it short, no worries, we're doing this for, at the moment, around 570 customers. We have more than 400 employees based on different locations. We have a location in the US as well, which is in Boston, and in Germany we're located in Bonn. That's where I'm located, and Munich, for everybody who is familiar with it. We are really happy and proud of a Net Promoter Score for more than 65, because this really reflects the way how we want to work with our customers and our community. It's just about exchange, discussing new topics, getting feedback from the market, and development of the software based on feedback that you get from the market. Same story, different audience is best place to work. We are proud of that as well, because this is rated by our employees and shows that we are like that they like to work for us, which is always important for a company which is fast growing than we are. So far from an overview what we are doing at LeanIX. So why are we dealing with the topic of enterprise architectures and S4 transformation? Basically, pretty simple. I think SAP themselves, they have a nice number published 2 years ago, I guess, where they said 77% of each transaction, of all the transactions in the world, so globally, are touching somehow an SAP system. So I think it's pretty difficult to find somebody who is not an SAP customer or who doesn't have an SAP application, and the same is valid for our customer base. So 75% roundabout are SAP customers in our customer base, and they of course have the big topic of this S4 journey, which is coming up. So they really have to have this challenge how to resolve it, right? And so we have a lot of discussions with different companies, different sizes, different industries on how they approach it. And of course, how the enterprise architectures are involved, how can they bring value to the whole project, and how can we strengthen the position of enterprise architecture in that project. So, and as you have seen from the title of this presentation, we do this data-driven. So we provide the solution where you can really like map everything out and see really, or make your decisions based on facts and collaborate. And that's really, really important in that case. Let me show you how we do this. We have a data model. And I think this to have a proper data model is always the basis on checking how we can provide value to customers. And we have different layers in this data model. So you have a strategy and transformation layer, which is obviously with a high focus on the project, so transformations. And then you have a business architecture layer, you have application data architecture, technical architecture, which is more or less the daily business of an enterprise architecture practice. And what we do is like, we just map it out on different fact sheet items. So if we consider strategy and transformation, what we are doing there is like having objectives, the company objectives, IT objectives, which you have, and map it to transformation items. Transformation items can be like a project, a building plan, an epic, or whatever. And we map out and rate which transformation items to support, right? So for example, your objective is SAP is calling this the intelligent enterprise, and you say, hi, I want to be that on this level in 2030. And then you have on a second level, you have so you have globally have 3 SAP systems, and you have one approach is consolidate them before you do your S4 transformation. And you have the S4 transformation themselves. So this is the transformation items which are supporting the objectives to make your S4 journey, and then in the end to be an intelligent enterprise by 2030. So that's what you would map out on that layer. And of course, business architecture is mainly about user groups, the business capability and processes. So how does this together, who is using what in the end? And then we have an application and data architecture layer. This is in the end to answer the question like which data object is transferred by which interface in between which application, and therefore interface diagrams, so you can see what's the relations in between the interfaces and applications, and the data flows, of course. So, and in the technical architecture, it's more like the technical view on the IT component. So which software release do I use, on which database? Is it a service? Isn't it a service? From a tech category, is it SaaS? Is it platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, so on and so forth. And if you consolidate some of the services, hardware and software you're purchasing, then you would have a selection on the provider and just see that you can follow probably a single vendor methodology. So this is basically daily business for an enterprise architecture. But if we put that into context to, for example, the sub-activate methodology, right? Then you pretty fast see what the value is of enterprise architecture for that service and what you can provide. For example, just in the discover phase, we say, okay, it's about understanding where am I? So what do I have in the system, and what do I want to reach, right? So just start with what is the as-is architecture and what is the to-be architecture? What do I want to reach? And a very powerful tool is business capability mapping and classification. Means that you would map out the business capability, answering the question, what is my company doing? And then you classify the business capabilities. So for example, you say, okay, finance is for me more commodity, right? Then you say HR, for example, payroll is commodity, yeah. But sourcing is innovation, because I really need to put focus on hiring people, and so on and so forth. And they just map out where you want to improve. So from a perspective, what is the company doing? What is commodity? What is simply about do it more efficient? And what is then innovation, and what is a real differentiator to my customers? Where do I really want to invest? And then you dig deeper into those business capabilities, and you check which applications are supporting this business capability. And then you can take a look at functional and technical fit of those applications and see, okay, what can we do? You see, okay, it's an SAP system. I will have to go for S4, but does it make sense to go on a cloud solution? Does it make sense to keep it on premise, so on and so forth? That's really powerful. And of course, the whole transparency topic by defining this as is infrastructure. So just to draw the picture, the full picture of the overall IT landscape, and just see, okay, what impacts the transformation. For example, SAP always starts telling it's about business transformation, right? So start with the processes, and then, okay, you can start with the process, take a look at the processes, check some KPIs, and you say, okay, I have 45 process variants, which is too much. Price per process is too high. So I want to redesign that process. But again, you will come back to the infrastructure, right? Because the process does have applications within the process, right? And if you change the process, then you will change the impact on the applications. And then you will have to see again, what is the impact of IT components, etc. So that's really powerful. Or diagrams for data flows, just to see where does the data go through which applications, by which interfaces, etc. So what do I have to tackle when starting such a simple S4 transformation? And of course, then more at the end, it's about deployment, so documentation, just document the changes done by this project, and then in the end continuously assess the portfolio in terms of functional and technical fit, just to do this whole stuff onboarding. So that's really important, and mainly what enterprise architecture is doing is connecting the dots and connecting and summarize the changes that we have, provide a strategy, provide different scenarios, and just highlight what are the impacts of those different scenarios, how do they fit to the objectives that that the company wants to reach. So it's really about keeping all the projects and topics together. So that's the involvement in theory. So what we did is the survey, and I just give some key figures out of that survey, so not the full survey, but something that was very stunning for us, and somehow was a little bit like made me afraid. So if you see that number, for example, you see that 32% are in the planning phase, and another 32% are in the project, but still in the conceptual and preparation phase. Which means in the end that 64% of all the customers haven't really started the project yet. So, and we have 2021, almost end of 2021. So we will not kick off so many projects, I guess, in Q4. And considering that the customer base of SAP, so they have around 400,000 customers, I think relevant customers for the S4 journey, so customers using an ECC 6.0 system are 35,000 roundabout. And then considering that 40, 45, 46% haven't really moved, this is really like it's a little bit crazy, right? Because time frame is 2027 with extended maintenance 2030, so it's not such a long period that you have for this project, and the project can be quite complex because usually you have more than one ERP system, and you don't have ERP systems, you have GTS, you have BW systems, you have EWM systems, etc. So many, the landscape is so huge, so we are talking about not a project which is like 6 months or a year. Usually it will take way longer than this. So it's really time to start here. And so we were very surprised from that number, which is so high still in 2021. Then we asked the attendees about their involvement, and I think that's pretty much matches what I showed you in the based on the Activate methodology. So 96% are involved, of course, in the planning phase. That's exactly what it is: business capability mapping, classification. It's about drawing the as-is scenario, project preparation in terms of which scenarios can we go, what is the impact of a scenario, etc. Then almost 50% are still involved in the implementation, and then it goes less and less until the rollout. Yeah, we just keep that number. Top challenges are identification of dependencies. Yes, because as for systems, they are really, really complex. Roadmap definition, yeah, we have different scenarios provided by SAP. So sometimes it's really hard to understand what the strategy is, so where to go. Is it cloud? And even in cloud, you have different solutions for different topics, and how to go there is not always clear from SAP. Then, of course, housekeeping of the legacy systems, because if you do your S4 transformation, you will always have your legacy system running, because you cannot do a big bang. You have to prepare the project, so it's always double amount of work. A little bit surprising stakeholder identification, but it's really important just to discuss and clarify ownership, who is responsible for what, who is the stakeholder, who has to do what. It's really important, and a big issue for SAP is the use case creation, right? That's so far, and it's evolving. Looks pretty good, pretty much how we expected it. And then there is the number: 47% of enterprise architects consider themselves sufficiently involved, meaning that 53% don't. So, and that's crazy a little bit, because the involvement of enterprise architecture in such a project is very, very powerful, as I showed you. And it's a little bit of a problem, or it shows a problem, a general problem that we have and what we have to resolve. So Jose mentioned this in his in the beginning, in the intro, that it's so, we are fast moving, right? So many projects in parallel, etc. And it's really tough if you have more than 50% of a practice involved in such a project doesn't feel sufficiently involved. This is a problem, and might explain why 70% of all transformations fail. I was a little bit shocked of the number as I found it, but there are several surveys, and they all come to a similar result. It's around about 70% of the transformations failing. Failing is defined as that the transformation project doesn't meet at least one out of the top 3 objectives that the project originally had. And for me, that's really, really crazy, because it shows that what I showed you at the very beginning, the mapping of objectives and transformation items. So you have a target, and that's why you do the project. You don't do the project and then we see what's coming out, right? So you want to achieve something, and that's really a problem. And it's not only a problem because the project was not successful, it's a problem because it has a serious impact. And I just searched for some examples that we have, like very prominent one. For example, Nike, well known, they spent 400 million on their ERP upgrade just for, and due to issues, due to business issues, they lost 100 million in revenue. So, and the share price dropped due to that by 20%, which is crazy. And to fix that, they had to extend their projects for another 5 years and spend another 400 million just to get it on track. So it's massive, expensive. Same for Haribo. Their stock price fell by 25% because they had issues with the supply chain and the production then. So again, a really high impact due to a failing transformation project. And what is really concerning, and going back to what Jose said in the very beginning, is projects are changing. So we are so fast. It's not that you have an as-is situation anymore. Then you define your to-be situation, then you do the project, and then you go back to normal, because there is no back to normal anymore. Considering S4 transformation means what I meant before, or what I said already before, is you have a very complex landscape, right? Usually you have 1, 2, 3 ERP systems. You can decide, okay, do I want to go for one global S4? Then you have to consolidate the systems. Maybe you have more than one client on the system, then you probably would want to consolidate the clients so that you have only one client per system. That's one option that you have. You can, of course, keep your 3 ERP landscapes, landscapes as well, but then you would have to do 3 transformations, 1 per system, right? And you would always have to maintain your legacy landscape. So this is an additional project. And we are not talking yet about moving to cloud in general with other components, implementing more SaaS software, or just replacing applications you already have by SaaS software and microservice and all this stuff. It's just around the S4 topic. So this is so huge. And if you consider then your ongoing business and you think, okay, we will probably expand in a region and then want to implement SAP there as well, then you have another implementation project running. Then you have you sell some parts of your company or some of the business, then you acquire some more business, you will have carve outs and carve ins. So all the time projects, right? Even in your SAP landscape. And there's way more outside SAP, because microservices and SaaS is a really big topic at the moment. So there is not this back to normal anymore. You have project, project, project. And if you then consider that 70% of this would fail in terms of that you don't meet the objectives, so you don't need why you do this project, this will be really painful for each and every company. And this is like what we're trying to do, and what we mean by enabling our customers making a continuous transformation by data-driven enterprise architecture. Because for us, it's about collaboration, right? And this sub-activate methodology gives a nice view on it, because you have different perspectives, right? You work in different departments. You have a process perspective. We took here as an example Signavio, where we have an integration from LeanIX side to Signavio, and you have LeanIX from a system architecture perspective. You have 2 perspectives, and the 2 perspectives are working on the same methodology. So they are answering the same questions to have the same steps in the end. And I think it's quite obvious, if everybody works on his own and you don't have a proper collaboration, you don't have the transparency in between those 2 perspectives, then you will have a lot of issues. You will lose a lot of power. There's so much friction in between there that this is not good for your project, and the project will fail. But if you can enable the departments, and I think we all agree that if you do an S4 project, you have made way more than 2 perspectives on it. But you have to enable this collaboration. You have to enable transparency to make this journey really successful. Otherwise, it will not be successful, right? And one thing, of course, is integrations. So as we did with Signavio, for example, this is really important. And very important is stakeholder identification and ownership in the end. Who is responsible for what? Just one example from the integration with Signavio. In the end, we designed we took a look at the different components that you from the fact sheet model, which I showed you at the very beginning. So we have processes, we have applications, we have IT components, we have transformation items, and you need to define who has the ownership. So which system or which department has the ownership? Who is the single source of truth for that, right? And then you have to bring it all together and make it transparent. And then you really have the chance to make a proper S4 journey. And there's a nice quote from Gartner. The future of application depends on the collaboration between IT and business units. And we from LeanIX believe this is totally true, because continuous transformation is about data and people, right? It's not only the technical side that we have to consider. Of course, that's complex, right? But if you you need to involve the people. You need to involve, in the first instance, the different teams working on that project. Like we had it at the very beginning from the survey, 53% were not happy with their involvement. So you need to work on that. You need to involve them so that they perform and do their task, and they feel part of the project. Not only they deliver as an enterprise architecture practice at the very beginning, all the preparation stuff, and then you lose them the further the project goes. So that's really important. And then later on, if it comes to the rollout, you need to have a proper alignment in between SAP IT, the business, the business process sides, the enterprise architecture practice, so on and so forth. So it's really about collaboration and transparency, which makes it really, really important to have a proper tool on the side and make this data-driven, because you cannot do transparency and collaboration on guesswork. You need to build that on facts, and that's really what the important part is here, to enable different departments to make decisions on data, so data-driven. That it's not the guesswork what you're doing. So I think it's good. It's just like, this is just a matter of fact. It is like this and this and this. And this is something we provide with LeanIX, with our tool. And then maybe if you're not convinced yet that the collaboration part and the transparency is one of the most important for such a journey, if we change perspective once again, and we consider that it is, so business transformation is about data and people. And you say, okay, when was your, so it's about relationship, people, it's always relationship, you need them. One is a relationship, no matter whether it's a marriage or it's a friendship or whatever, is successful. It's always successful if you feel part of it, if you are transparent, if there's trust, and you can work with each other. And that's exactly the same for a project. So the most projects really fail not to a skill set, or that the people are not skilled enough to perform the task. It's more that they are not really, they don't feel involved. You don't have the alignment, you don't have the collaboration and transparency. And that's exactly why a tool-based approach, which is data-driven, is so much more powerful than have different data silos in Excel and any project management software and so on and so forth, but to have a single source of truth. And the only party who can really bring all this together and connect the dots, in our understanding, is the enterprise architecture practice, because there is everything coming together, and that's the main task. Keep that together, enable them, the whole company, to have a data-driven approach based on collaboration and transparency. That's just what I wanted to share with you, the learnings that we had from our survey. And
fantastic, Timo. Very, very interesting presentation. I think that we have a lot in the audience who have experienced ERP implementations and transformations that were not in the 30% side of the success. And the one out of those three objectives were not achieved. And the very first question that came up is from William Fuller, and he is discussing, and you've made the suggestions already in your presentation, because he asked a little bit earlier when you're still developing the theme. But his question is, what do you do to make these transformations more successful? And specifically, he says, it seems like there's plenty of money being spent. Is there something about our approach to change that you would identify as needing improvement? So you talk a lot about change management issues related to these ERP implementations. If you can go a level deeper on how do you, on the organizations that do it well, what looks different for them in terms of the collaboration that takes place, and what does what is maybe the secret sauce that they have?
They're using the Linux tool. No, just kidding. No, they really follow a centralized approach where you have like the definition of ownership is, I think, very important. So who owns what? And then decide on the single source of truth for that. What we experience pretty often is that you have different versions for the same content within the company. So everybody, so you have an enterprise architecture practice, and they should deal with the stuff which they're in charge of. And then you have, of course, business process and process management, and they have the skill set and all the stuff to be in charge of all the BPI stuff, redesign of processes and make suggestions. But you have to bring this together, right? And we often experience at customers who are not using a tool and do this tool-based and data-driven, is that there is a data silo, there's a data silo, and there's a data silo, and then you have different, simply it's different versions of an Excel spreadsheet, and you make your decisions based on a not accurate, not actual data set. And this is an issue, right? Because especially for what's coming up, that we don't have this back to normal in a project. It's like it's continuous. There's who knows, when you now start your S4 transformation, and you say it takes 5 years. So it's very, if you go to a mid-sized company, a little bit bigger, they are all talking of a time frame from 3 to 5 years at least, right? So there will be so much change in technology within the next 3 to 5 years, right? So you need to have an agile approach. This agile approach will only work if you somewhere have a single source of truth, because everybody, it will be a total mess if you don't have this definition. And I think that's really the difference, because first of all, ownership, and if you have the ownership, then you can decide on how to spread and collaborate. But the most important thing is really like, where's the ownership? Where's the single source of truth? That's important.
Yeah, as you said, there's so many challenges. In 3 to 5 years, not only the technology changes, but the business processes change, the ownership of those processes and the people in the organization change. It's really a miracle that 30% of them are successful because there's so much that can go wrong. But now, when you look at, I think it seems to me that a lot of these ERP implementations expose weaknesses that were in the system throughout, and then it comes to a head because of such a systematic, implementation and transparency to some of these issues. Let's talk a little bit about governance. We have the IT side, the enterprise architecture side, you have the human relationship side, you have process. What kind of governance, and I'm thinking about governance here not from a compliance standpoint, but from a structure approach to implementing change. What type of governance do you think works well for bringing these parties together, for making the right decisions? What do you see out there in the field that works?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, the important part is, again, is the ownership, right? So it's really to structure and have clear ownership and responsibilities. And we experience a lot that you have, like, you design your ownership, and then you start with the project, and then you say, and then it comes to different departments, say, yeah, but this should be more on my side because we do it since years, we do it like this, right? And the other side, like, I do it like this since this and this. And I think that's really the key issue is really what is possible, and just to catch the people, to catch the teams, right? Because it's sometimes one is always the driver, but if you're in charge of, doesn't mean that you necessarily do whatever you want or what you think is right. It's like that's what we have in the survey, right? 53% of EAs, they don't feel involved sufficiently. So you're involved at a certain step of the project, and this, I'm sure, counts for all the different departments. So there is your part of the project, right? And you have to deliver your input, your skills, and all that stuff. And then you're out again. And it doesn't necessarily, that it doesn't work like this, right? You don't feel involved. It's like, so, okay, now I put the pieces together, I brought my impact, and now, and I think that's the important part, just to involve all the teams over the full period, because you will need them again. What you mentioned with the business process redesigning, now we have end-to-end processes designed, and everybody should follow those end-to-end processes and make it simple. And I'm pretty sure that in the next 3 to 5 years, you will have new end-to-end processes, you have, or something else, you have then end-to-end scenarios or whatever. So there will be change again, and then you again need the BPM side, right? But they had their S4 project and they just brought their impact and said, okay, let's do it like this. And then somebody else decided, oh no, we do it differently, but you didn't work on this with them. So they don't feel involved, and then it doesn't work. If you don't feel involved in a project, it will not work.
Yes, I think that's one key lesson from change management. Those who are not part of the creation at the point of creation will resist the implementation, and no matter how good the idea is. Collaboration is critical here, and you have emphasized that throughout. There is technical competency that you must have, but beyond that, what are the skills that you believe that enterprise architects must have or develop to be operating at the highest level?
Of course, the technical skill set, the technical understanding, but also I think it's changing a little bit. It's like being able to provide advisory in the end. So this is, in my opinion, changing massively in the EA practice, because you need to be more present in all the business decisions. So this was different in the past, but in the end, enterprise practice is the only practice who can provide the overview about the landscape in terms of applications. They will be the only ones who can structure microservices, right? Microservice at this stage is a real mess because it's so much, so many microservices deployed on Azure, AWS, GPC, wherever, and you don't know. And each business unit does their own microservice, and sometimes they do the same microservice for the same thing, but they don't know that this exists. So you do it all double. So this is the next big part which you want to have, like just to see where's the microservice? Which microservice do I have? Where are they? What are they supporting? Where are they hosted? And the same is for software as a service. You can buy it with a company credit card, right? So every employee can do is buy your own service, your own solution, right? You need to bring that all together, and that's something really the ability to connect the dots and bring this all together and build an advisory story out of that. I think this is very crucial for the future enterprise architects.
Timo, so for someone who is starting, and I'm looking at the themes that have emerged here from the participants, and there is kind of a common theme, which is like, we have not started yet our journey onto this enterprise transformation through a new ERP system. So for those who are starting the next 6 months to 1 year, what are the top 2 or 3 pieces of advice you have for them to get it started right? What are some of the things that they must take into account that maybe, are not as obvious as, we all want to have like good planning and collaboration, but is there something behind that people make mistakes on in the very beginning that they could benefit from?
I think it's really about what we experience, aligning the objectives. It's really important to have, so usually each company has corporate objectives, right? But they are not always known in all the different departments. So we really need to break the objectives down from up to the bottom, so that you really aligned on that. And what I mentioned is a really powerful tool for this is business capability mapping and classification. It's really to do, so what is important, S4 is very expensive, a lot of resources. So it's really, where do I start? What do I do? What are the steps? And it's, if you map out your business capabilities and classify them, what is really like commodity and what do I really need to innovate and to differentiate from the customer, from my competitors, then you really have an idea of where to put the focus on and understand where you are, and then you can make better decisions if you align this with the objectives, right? And then you follow that approach. This is really powerful, what we experience at our customers.
Timo, Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and wisdom with us. This has been very valuable. Lots of great feedback on your presentation. And this is a very important topic. We're going to have other two speakers from SAP, one focused on artificial intelligence, another one on ERP implementations in this conference. They're gonna look at this from SAP's perspective and the ERP implementation perspective. Such an important topic. Lots of value to be created, but also destroyed if not done correctly. And you have done a masterful job in showcasing that to us and how you can use LeanIX platforms to understand the enterprise architecture and zoom in on the risk areas and value creation areas. So thank you so much for all of that and sharing your expertise with our global audience today.
Thank you, Jose, for having me and being here. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Timo Wild directly from Bonn, Germany, on this very important topic of enterprise architecture, ERP implementation and systems. And it's a true masterclass on how to combine these very important subjects. We're going to be taking a break now. And at the top of the hour, we're going to have a couple of industry leaders will be a treat for us, and I'm talking about Mark McGregor, who is an author, performance and business coach and advisor for a number of technology companies, and Jean-Marie Zirano, Chief Marketing Officer for Excellence, who are going to be talking to us about enterprise architecture and how do you measure it, what models work, how to make them work. And two experts in the industry sharing their wisdom. I think Mark is in the UK, and Jean-Marie Zirano is going to be coming directly from France to us today. And I look forward to seeing you and their presentation at the top of the hour. Take a break now, and we'll be back at the top of the hour.